Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
so welcome to technically the second, what are we calling it? Development
Developing
Insight.
insight. Yes.
Yeah, um, that's the working name. Maybe it'll stay. I don't know. But yeah, today our subtitle was we're going to be building our guest speaker form intake. So we had a lot of great speakers the last what two, no 3 4 months ago. Wow, it's been a long time. Um, and we basically identify a couple of issues when it came to collecting the name, scheduling the date for their guest speaking, grabbing a photo, all that fun stuff. And there's other solutions that can help us with that, but as developers we probably enjoy building it ourselves and having it really integrate with the rest of the tools that we're going to be building. So today we're going to kind of go over how we currently have planned out the front end. We're going to do probably a little work on the back end, setting up the back end to route the information from the static front end that we're going to be building, route it through our back end API that's going to route it to our Notion because we're using Notion as a headless CMS slash database, which is kind of cool. Um, yeah, so let's go get started with the front end. Zach, if you want to share what you have with your design and how we're thinking of incorporating it into the back end.
Yeah, we'll rewind it just a little bit
Okay.
because I want to identify the problem. So I've been kind of curating these guest speakers and doing all the work, kind of getting them scheduled, and need to get their headshots and their title of their talk, their just brief bio of them, all that kind of stuff. And it's just I noticed the repetition in it, and so I wanted to streamline the process just by making a simple form that I can send the guest speaker. They can fill out, and it will go into our Notion database for us to, you know, approve to go out live. And basically, you know, the best developers are lazy, right? So I'm trying to be lazy. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so let me go ahead and share screen here. Um, so first off, this is just a simple static form, right? So the main thing I was sitting there thinking about at first was just like, what do I use? Well, why not vanilla? Because it doesn't need to be all crazy for the front end, right? It's just a form. So and then we also discussed, how we're going to deploy this and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that a little bit later. So real quick, I just wanted to kind of walk through the code that I've got. Let's see. I'm trying to see if we can. Well, I guess I can just keep it above our you know screens
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Um, so yeah, I'm just going to walk you through the code and the design real quick. Uh, so this is kind of the working product right now, the MVP, if you will. Simple form, like I said. Some stuff's likely to change as we kind of get our branding more in place and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to get an MVP going that was kind of in line with our website's design currently. So yeah, just a simple form, and then uh, for the HTML, it's the simplest part that we can understand. I just have created a form uh, for the guest speaker, right? And then I've got some inputs basically just laid out, and then we can, there's a space, accept their inputs and then submit the form, right? And we'll get into more of the what's going to be happening when submitting that in a little bit as well. But um, yeah, so really simple templating, right? Uh, Actually, the thing that took me the longest was probably some of the CSS, and you'll kind of see why. It's the biggest file I've got so far, and so basically, I applied a bunch of styles to the different elements and created the design that you just saw. Um, some of the things I needed to account for was just how long it was getting in general. So I've been working a lot with Sass lately at work. So I wanted to basically I wanted to use variables, right, with my CSS, and I figured out that you could do that. So that was one thing I did to keep it just a little bit easier. Um, but another thing I had to account for was for the media queries, right? It's just vanilla. I wanted it to look decent on all different screen sizes. And so basically that entailed me, if I can find, here we go, that entailed me having to basically make the fields bigger that the user fills out, the input boxes, right? Whenever we shrink down, and we can actually do that real quick, right? So I wanted it to stay a decent size and all that stuff without, because if I didn't do that kind of stuff, basically it would be only half the size that it is now, and it'd look like crap. So yeah, let's see, back to VS Code. Um, I got a simple SVG for the logo. That was actually something that took me a second to figure out, because if we go down here and for the headshot, wherever the user uploads the actual photo of themselves, basically I was using input of type file, right? And I'm accepting PNG and JPEG files, but the button that comes with that looks like crap. So I just basically had to make something and style it myself. And basically then we're getting ready to get into the JavaScript, by the way. Very simple JavaScript so far. It's kind of ugly at the moment because I'm debugging some stuff, or checking the values, not debugging, but all that kind of stuff. But essentially just a couple lines of JavaScript. We can remove this, and we can move this up real quick. Sorry, I'm seeing this stuff that needs to be fixed along the way. But basically, I needed to hide the input field for the headshot, and then put a new button in place, and that button needed to be clicked whenever the shown button was clicked. So yeah, I just do that, and actually we can just remove this because that was for testing. You can see it's getting quite a bit smaller right off the bat. Very, very simple for the front end JavaScript. So yeah, like I said, the styles took the longest. A lot of this is just MVP, and it can be reworked and done better. But the main thing is getting something working and going. So that, I mean, that's pretty much it on that. It's very, very simple. Not much to it. So this is the kind of project that you can get going on quickly. And if you're just learning stuff, it's a perfect kind of project. Just build a simple form. But yeah, so I guess whenever Miguel and I were talking about this, we knew that we needed to be able to let the guest speaker essentially have access to submit to our Notion database. They needed to be authorized to do that for a submit into our database, and then we can then check it out real quick and set it to published, and boom, then it goes onto the website. Really handy type of stuff. But um, when we discussed structuring it like that, we knew that we were going to have to build a backend to handle this stuff a little bit better. And we knew we were going to need some backend stuff for our website and our other projects, anyways, that are like basically entailed in our current state of building the community website. So, anyways, from there, I'm going to give it back to Miguel to talk about what we did or next, or what we are currently doing, I should say.
Yeah. So the way we're going to be developing the backend, and let me pull it up. Let's see. Let me. Boom. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So the way we're going to be developing our backend is going to be with Node.js, and we're going to be using the following framework called Nest.js. I'm kind of moving towards it because there's a lot of functionality baked into it. It's going to be using TypeScript, so it's going to be another thing that we can dig into. And kind of, I am a C# person. I like my type, so having TypeScript within one of the projects is going to be very nice. And then we actually had a guest speaker yesterday talk about testing. And this framework was really cool because it already has a lot of that built in. So it already has a lot of the testing built in into the command line. So when you generate these modules, which are basically following the MVC model. So when we generate these modules, which are like, we auto generate a controller, we auto generate a view, we auto generate a service, etc. We're going to be able to also be able to generate like this boilerplate for testing. So it's going to be really nice for that. And then we're also able to, let's see, has a lot of functionality. We can even hook up to databases like MongoDB, Postgres if we needed to. The really cool thing is also has a really good middleware function. So when we're going to be sending out the link to a guest speaker, it's going to come up with the code, right? So we're going to auto generate a code that's going to only allow them to submit. So because this is going to go from our backend to Notion, and basically we're going to have a token that's going to give them access to be able to submit a form. So nobody, whoever just finds the URL, will be able to submit. They're going to be needing a token. So that's going to be really nice. And also, if we go down here, we kind of go here. We have the ability to also do some cron jobs. So we're going to be able to like auto deploy a lot of things. We're going to be able to basically set up custom scheduling for any events we might have in the future, or any backend tasks that we need to run. Let's see. And then it just kind of here's another part as well for file upload. So because we are going to be routing images from the guest speaker form, we're going to be able to move and do very easy file uploads. And yeah, it has a bunch of other functionality if we ever need to start building other interesting tools for the community. We're going to be able to have built-in authentication. We're going to be able to rate limit as well. We're also planning on building like a Discord bot and other kind of bots in general. So having this kind of be the core of where everything's going to intersect, it's going to be a really good foundation. Let's see. And then the command line is pretty good for that as well. So yeah. And basically so far we're still kind of working out how we're going to connect it. Let's see, let me switch over to
Now we're getting to the good stuff.
maybe so we're basically just testing out a little bit, because we're going to be technically working with APIs. I have my Postman application running, and we're just been playing around with this before the stream. And basically, this is where I'm kind of starting to kind of put everything together before I actually write code. So we a lot of the current functionality we've been doing so far has been just retrieving data from Notion, right? So we've been our website, our static website's actually pre-built, right? So um, all the data is pulled beforehand. So we haven't been really pushing anything into Notion. We've been doing it manually. So here's where we're going to be actually posting data into the Notion API. And so this is kind of the current structure. So we have to submit a JSON data into that post request. And I've been looking at the way we should be structuring it, et cetera, right? So currently the way you create Notion is you have to define the parent. So the parent is basically the ID for the database or the table that we currently have in Notion. And so our database ID is this very large UUID. And then here's where we're going to be defining the properties, or they're already defined in Notion, but then we're going to be replicating it. And that's kind of what we also need to research. So the way we're defining it here is we have to define the column name, what type it is. So this is going to be a rich text, and then we're going to be able to pass in rich text values in here. I'm currently getting an issue here that I'm trying to submit plain text and it's supposed to be a rich text. So not quite sure how that's going to work. So if I go, so like if I updated it now, it's saying it's undefined by the parent. Um, I'm finding that this message here is not really that clear to what the actual error is, because it seems to be a very generic error.
Yeah.
And so
They
if I
Notion
go
is
ahead
pretty
and remove, yeah, so if I remove that and I leave this empty, um, what's really cool is it's going to return a general structure of how we need to build out our request, right? So we don't need all this extra information, but if we scroll down here, so these are all the properties in our database or our Notion database. So for our guest speakers, we do have, so we actually have a relationship system set up. So all our events have a relationship to like a speaker. So like if we're gonna have a guest, a host, or anyone, we're gonna be able to like create that relationship. Um, I think at the beginning we're gonna kind of ignore this for now. Right now we just want to get the guest speaker information into the Notion database essentially. We'll probably deal with relationships another day for the event portion of it. But yeah, we're basically looking at like implementing images. So that's going to be a file type. So that's how we're going to handle the file uploads. Um, the slug is going to be auto generated now. Before we had to manually create it, but it's going to be auto generated based on the topic at hand. So what's going to happen is within the code, we're going to basically take the value of topic, right? And then we're just going to generate a slug for it, which basically means replacing all the spaces with dashes, right? Um, so that's how we're going to generate the slug. The video is posted after the fact, and this is probably going to become like a relationship thing if we ever have like repeating guest speakers. So if they come back, they'll just have an array of videos that they are part of instead of just having a single video. So hopefully we get to that part and we'll get to that. So once we have our first repeat guest host, guest speaker come back in, we'll probably update that value to be a relationship value. Um, and then, yeah, again, so currently a lot of it is just rich text right here. So again, we go to the role, rich text, email, rich text, topic, right? The title is the title, obviously. Now we have to figure out how to define this, basically this array, right? So for rich text. And so if I switch back to my browser, oh, you can jump in if you have any questions, Zach.
I'm along for the ride. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm obviously I've messed around with the API a little bit, so I I know the pain of structuring their objects, right,
Hmm.
and then destructuring them to grab the values. But
Yeah. So let's see. If I go back into get rid of that. Um, I'm trying to find the part property values. Yep. So Notion has a lot of property values. We're mainly going to be working with the rich text here. So you can see you kind of have a defined ID, which is auto generated by Notion when we create an object or we create a field. Um, Here's the type, and I wish I could share two things at the same time, but that's fine. So obviously, if we look back to what we're looking up, we define the type, which is going to be rich text, and then now we actually have to define the rich text, which is like defined here. So if we go into the rich text objects, so we have that property, right? And so basically, this is the structure of how the object should be created. And then rich text also has like annotations if you like within like Notion, if you make it bold, italic, etc. Hoping we can leave a lot of that blank. Um, so if we go down here, see how we have a text object, which should be the same as like if I go up here, should literally be rich text, right? And here's the part where I try to create a plain text and it gave me an error, right? Um, I need to give it this content key value. It's going to be a string, and then hopefully that would allow me to post that data. So I'm going to go switch back to the Postman. And like I'm literally learning as we develop this, like going into the Notion um, documentation to actually figure it out. Like I'm not really spending the time to go through the entire documentation. I'm just kind of looking for what I need.
yeah,
Um,
I feel like
so
that's the best route to go, like initially, because you just learn a lot as you build. Uh, I mean, it happened with me even on building the form. There was I've not used just vanilla technologies in a while, so yeah, so
mhm.
I had to do the same kind of thing. I had to be constantly uh, researching some little things here and there, like, oh, how do we do that again in JavaScript? But it's so much easier once you've done it a lot of times. Like, you know how to Google stuff that you need quickly. You just, just like you did right there. You just looked at the documentation really quickly, uh, found something that you needed, and then you move forward a step. And so I feel like that's kind of just a good way to get started. I mean, how do you get from one place to another? You put one foot in front of the other. So it's the same thing with building a project.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I'm getting a bunch of errors. I'm gonna be trying to add all these key values until something works. And I'm trying to replicate what we currently have in another example, which I'll probably pull up in a second. So just gonna type in content for now. Honestly, I feel like again, this validation error doesn't really make sense because it's like body that parent, even though we have the errors down here, not necessarily up here, right? Um, but real quick, I'm gonna be pulling up some example data. So if you can chat for a bit, Zach. Um,
Yeah, I'm assuming that you're pulling up the front end of the website
yeah,
for.
and then I'm gonna be pulling
Okay.
some example code from it real quick.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, like we said before, we've been messing around with this API a little bit already because that's where our data is stored. Like Miguel was saying a little bit ago, we're using it as our headless CMS and our database. So it's really powerful because somebody, say we had somebody that wanted to help with copywriting or something like that, and they don't necessarily want to touch the code, we can still give them access uh, to the database, and they can add the stuff in that they need very quickly. Um, it's really straightforward, but uh, it is a lot to take in. Their API is really powerful. It's a huge object, and it stores a lot of different stuff that I don't even feel like I would use half the time, but that doesn't that doesn't necessarily matter. You might somebody's gonna need to use that somewhere. I'm assuming they have it that way because that's how they built it for themselves. Um, so,
Hmm.
and then they just probably reworked a little bit of stuff and exposed the API. But yeah, another project that we've talked about doing, and that would again be within this, is just mapping the data that comes back and structuring it into an object that is a little bit easier to deal with, for a few reasons, right? Uh, when you start looking at the templating of our website, you'll notice there's just a lot of bound properties that are these API, just being called from the return object from the API. And it gets very verbose, as you can see. I mean, if I needed to call bold, right, I'd have to do properties, role, annotations, bold, right? And it gets
And these are just
really,
conditional. Like
yeah, that's
you
just
have to.
conditional. Because if
So
it's got text, it goes to rich text and all that kind of stuff. And it's crazy, but we don't necessarily need all of that stuff. So one of our ideas was to create a new object, on return from the API call, and structure it to something more usable and more readable, for the front end, because this is an open source project. Our hope is to get more people involved within our community, and we want it to be as simple as it can be. It can already be a daunting task to jump into something that's been going for a while, but um, a lot of this stuff is really easy to get started with. But yeah, so that's another future project. Right now, we're figuring out the guest speaker form. That our
mhm.
eyes get bigger than our the hours in the day, I guess, because we get all these ideas and we want to do stuff, but you got to just do one at a time, pretty much.
Oh, for sure. I'm trying to figure out. Um, Probably gonna stop sharing that real quick.
I
So
mean,
one thing about Notion is that they have different versions of the API already. So if I go back to the let's go back into the web browser, go back here. Actually, go back one. Where is the rich text editor information? Wait, what? Hold up.
the next tab over.
Oh
Or
no, the
oh,
API was down for a second.
oh,
So property rich text. That's not gonna help. Yeah. So the updated version. So prior to version 2024.53, the rich text editor was text, but now it's rich text. Which is interesting because if we go back in here, I basically called the information here. So we're pulling this information, right? So this is the row of the this is how the row is actually structured, that we're retrieving back from the API, right? So we would assume that if we were able to grab this object and replace it and submit it back to Notion, it should work, right? Um, Now, the interesting part here is we're asking for a rich text, right? Role is supposed to be a rich text um, component, but you can clearly see the type here is text, right? Type is text. Why is it text even though it's asking for rich text? And I'm pretty sure we have updated our API to be using the newest version. Um, so it's pretty interesting that it's not returning a rich text type. And if we go here into our uh, guest speakers, right? Hold up. Yep, here we go. So see how we have this defined here as a text, but through the API, it technically should be a rich text. Um, that's kind of the interesting part about this development. So we have our annotations, content, but when we try to pull that information, it's not doing what we want. So if I change back to our postman here, and then basically this will be a success if we go. We might have to change our API key. That's fine. um, that's fine. Not a big deal. So yeah, if we go back over here again, really, yeah, we're gonna change our API key. Um, so we're defining it as a rich type, then we have our rich text, right? And then technically, this is the way it was structured initially. Obviously, we're getting a failed request here. So clearly, our type should be rich text, right? For text, and this should be rich text, right? So if I send it, we would assume by all logic this should be working. I currently don't know what's going on. Because again, if we remove that temporarily and submit it, we can see here in the data we got back. Obviously, we don't need to include ID because that's auto-generated. But clearly, we need to define that it's a rich text, and then we have to pass in an array of a rich text, right? Now, all of them are rich text. The only one that's not is name, and then our relationship and file. So currently, I do not understand why this is not working. I wish I knew it, but basically, this is kind of the process of kind of going through the documentation, testing it out, and trying to figure it out. Um, do you have any suggestions, Zach?
Um, no, I'm not understanding. Besides, maybe we could pivot and basically we could start doing the back end logic and see if it's submitting to a fake API, like fake address or something.
Sure.
Uh,
Okay.
and then we can debug at some point. It's
Cool.
probably something simple, but not that simple because their objects are
A
pretty
little.
pretty nested.
Oh, for sure. Let's see. Which one is it? Don't even know which one it is. Here we go. Cool. Yep, MWA coders backend. Cool. Let's build out below. Okay. So I'm gonna be running a command. And I should have it over here. Here we go. ng resources, the nest CLI command. And so this is basically going to be handling our form. So gonna call it guest speaker. A little long, but it should be fine. And here's
It
the really
says
cool.
exactly what it is, so it's perfect.
I mean, I would have put GSF, but whatever.
No,
We
let's
want this
just
to
name
be
it
readable.
X, man. Let's just name it X.
um, so here's the really cool thing about Nest. So we can define it as a REST API, and that's what we're probably going to go with. Well, we are going to go with REST API, but we can actually create a GraphQL um, endpoint, or like that's the really cool thing about Nest. We can create a WebSocket, we create a microservice that basically runs within our backend and doesn't have any access to the internet necessarily, right? Um, so we're gonna create a backend, and just for now, we're gonna allow it to make some boilerplate, even though we're gonna erase a lot of the CRUD stuff. Um, we're only really gonna keep the create endpoint of it. And you can see it's pretty quickly. Now up here in our source folder, we have a new folder, guest speaker. Notion is going to kind of be only the service here, which is going to be running. But for now, we're going to kind of focus on our controller here, and we're going to focus on our service. So we're going to start off by basically, we really don't need much of this at all for now. We only need the post request here, because the front end form is going to be posting data to this API, and then this API is going to be running code from the Notion service. Let's see. Technically, this would be the Notion update to do, right? Once we get that figured out. And then technically we can return the data, but we can return a simple message that says form submitted successfully, right? If I can spell, don't judge me on my spelling. And so
Yeah, it's spelled wrong.
I know. uh,
It's all right.
okay, so now we need to be able to take in a request data. And so here's our DTO that it's auto generated. So if we go into our create here, and because we are using TypeScript, so basically we need to define the fields that are going to be submitted from the form. So technically, let me open
Is
up the. Hold
Nest
up.
strict with its TypeScript, or
We can change it. You can just change it
okay,
in the configuration.
okay.
So let's
I
go
just
into.
didn't. I figured somebody might want to know that question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, just like generally TypeScript, you can go and change how strict you want it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not something that's locked in. Let's go guest speaker form. Open up that folder, and let's open up the HTML um, on the right side of it. Okay, cool. So let's kind of base it off of our current HTML code. Let's see. So we're gonna have a first name, string, last name, string, and I'm guessing most of these are gonna be string until we get to the file, right?
Yeah, but you're there now.
Okay.
Oh, I see something. I got Angular happy there. How I made it upload ID. Uh, anyways.
Oh, gotcha. Uh, so are we going with the name headshot, or
I mean that's what it is essentially, right? Their
yeah.
photo.
Um I don't think it has a file type. Actually never done a file. Okay. So how would you define a strict type for file on TypeScript?
That's a good question. Why don't we
Should we
research that?
should we Yeah, so you want to pull up your browser and do a little research?
Share screen?
Yeah, you should be
or
able to move.
do you want me to do it? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. Change some options around here.
Okay. Let's see. Walk us through your process of research, Zach.
How do I research? Well, I've gotten a little bit better as time goes by, for sure. Let me get this pulled up. So that's one of the things. Like at first, you don't know what to research. You don't know what you don't know. But as you kind of move along in your process, you start to know more of what you need. Um, and then there's all sorts of tricks with your Google searches that you can do. One that I do often is, since I'm working with JavaScript all the time, basically a lot of my Google searches will include jQuery stuff. And so I just literally you put the minus sign and jQuery, and boom, anything with jQuery just gone. So you can take the time to research more of that stuff, but I don't want jQuery stuff when I'm researching what to do. So basically, uh, we need to define a type of what file.
Hmm.
Let's see. So I mean, I start looking at the first stuff that pops up. It depends. Like if it is more, if I need to look more at the documentation specifically, I'll definitely always do that first. And you can see we're here. But this is not what we need. Let's see. So TypeScript define. Would it be an image? Because I've type define file type. No, because I feel like that's just going to get me more of the same type of stuff. See, let's see. So this is one of those times where I could get better at looking at what I'm trying to find.
Hmm.
Let's see.
So try to type in TypeScript image type. So our detail is we're defining a type, right? And we're trying to define the image type. So and we're trying to use TypeScript, obviously, right? So
Somebody asks, what they define an image as, right? And the first answer and the
only.
only answer is boom. So yeah, and I don't know if let me look at that real quick. And did I make it a required thing? I don't believe that I did, because I did. Okay, that's fine too.
Hmm.
So we don't need to include the question mark, but yeah,
So just file.
image file. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Simple, right?
super simple.
All right. Cool. Look at that debugging, figuring things out. Cool. So if you kind of can you run down those solutions though? Why file is the solution based on like the way the person answered the question? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute
Yeah.
there. So, I mean, depends on what you're trying to do. Specifically, I'm looking at this one, a URL to image, and that would be like whenever you sorry, my phone is ringing. Whenever you are need the essentially it's like it could be like a URL or something, right?
Mhm.
Which it actually says right here. Duh.
Yeah.
I got distracted by the phone call, but URL, right? And that is just an image, right? And so at that point, it's a string. Um, but what we are trying to get is a file because the user is going to upload an image of themselves, a headshot, and you know, voila.
Mhm. Yeah, and so if you're more of a JavaScript kind of person and you're like, oh, types, it kind of adds a lot of extra stuff to it, right? But down the line, as development goes through, and if this backend, we foresee the backend gonna be the glue that kind of holds everything together, right? It's gonna be the one hooking up to Notion, it's the one hooking up to a lot of the tools that we're gonna be building out, and having these types and these ability to basically protect people from writing bad code or not forgetting to define something correctly. And say somebody tries to give us a URL instead of an actual file, right? For whatever reason, TypeScript is going to be allow us to really like respond with errors and be able to fix that before it even goes to production. Hopefully, right? Um, so yeah. Uh, so let's go back to the actual code. Let me take over. Yep. Cool. Wow, I probably need some water, but yeah. So now we know we just need our file, and if for anyone that doesn't know, the little question mark means it's optional. So if we do question mark, that basically means that's an optional field. It's not really required when we're building this out. And then again, our DTL is basically defining our data types that we're going to be bringing in from our request. So right here where we're defining our DTO. So yep. And so what else do we need, Zach? The title, which is gonna be talk title. Um, and the other thing too, I feel like we also um let's see, copied the wrong one. Okay, cool. And that's just gonna be a string as well. About me, and is that it?
That's it so far. I mean,
Wait, hold up. Right. So is it bio or about me?
well, it's actually bio.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, this is just a label, right? What really matters is what we're defining here.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So, let me move this to. Nope. Okay, cool. Yeah. So now we kind of have data coming in. Now we have our controller here. We have everything kind of working. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna console log our DTO. And basically now we have an endpoint called guest speaker form. So let me open up another art term. Oops. Wrong command. Okay, cool. So if I do curl localhost, and are we running the server? Let's start up the server. npm run start. um, so now we're starting our backend, and yay, we got errors. Cool. Um, that's coming from our Notion problem. Uh, yeah, let's get rid of that for now. Um, okay. Okay, great. Async create promise snippet. Where's this coming from? Oh, uh, Notion service. let's just comment the entire code. Okay, we should be good now. Okay. Wow, love it. Okay, because I'm already okay. I have another service running. Hold up. Let's see. Let's stop the front end and yeah. Cool. Okay, now we have a working back end. So technically, if I do curl localhost 3000, it should return something to me. Yep, hello world. Okay, so hello world's currently the this controller here, which has the hello world service, right? So that's how we have our backend now. Technically, I should be able to grab that and go slash get speaker, and then message 404 cannot find um guest speaker form. Actually, let's go ahead and do something really quickly. Gonna have get and do okay. So this is a post, and the curl is not gonna really work that way. I'm just gonna return a speaker, and this is just kind of to verify that our code is working. Um, Come on, you gotta be kidding me. Let's see, controller, get speaker. Let's go into our look at our documentation. Uh, okay, go into documentation, defining an API controller. Changes. Nope, should be working. Let me try it in the browser. Okay, getting cannot get guest speakers dash form. Let me switch over to Postman for now and try to do that. Well, okay.
You want to share that?
Yeah, I'm switching. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And this is pretty much debugging. So, okay, here we go.
I feel like that's half in development though, like, or
Yeah.
maybe even more than that, and thinking, you know, problem
Mhm.
solving.
Yeah. So we do have our get up here. Oh, sorry. Let me.
Needs
Oh,
a drink.
yeah,
Needs
I
a
think.
drink.
um, so obviously we have our controller. We're importing get and we're importing and then these are um wow. Can you explain what this is, Zach?
Oh, what Postman is, or what you're trying to do? So
Oh, my bad. Let me go back to the code. Uh, Shoot, I, I need to clear my throat. So let's see. Uh, this part.
so we're using a decorator for a get request, right? So it's just kind of how model view controller architecture is set up. So what he was trying to do before was use a post request, but we can't do that currently. Am I correct in that thinking?
Hmm.
I think that's the whole point of us doing a get request though instead. And then really what we're doing um, is just trying to return. We're debugging it, essentially making sure that we're connected and that we've got that endpoint and that it returns. Um, that. So
And I'm guessing that should, yeah. For some reason, it's not finding our endpoint. Um,
I mean, we're right at the end, anyways, because
yeah,
and I feel
we
like,
are
well, you know, you just have to do a lot of research and stuff to figure this stuff out. But I've not used it before, so I'm gonna have to start delving into it. But
for
I mean,
sure. Because that should be our endpoint, right? So when we define our controller here and we're giving the value to it, that's technically our endpoint of the parent of all the functions down here. So if we don't give a value here, this is basically gonna be the root. There's gonna be a post request. So we would do like new, right? Like if we give this a new value, our URL should end up being let's see, it would have to be something like that, right?
who
Um,
knew? uh,
so
yeah, yeah.
so you gotta love when stuff doesn't work when you're developing in front of people and all that fun stuff.
I mean,
So
it just happens this way in real life. So,
yep,
uh, I mean, until you
yeah,
get more and more used to whatever it is you're using, uh, then you should just slowly get better. But
yep,
we both haven't used, or I have not used this, and Miguel's only used it what once. So,
yep. That's the
so
funny thing, though. So it's very simple, and it should be very simple to bring up. So it's kind of hilarious that it's not working right now, but because we can get hello out. That's great.
that's something. Now my, now I need to clear my throat. All right, let's let's go ahead and call this one because we got to debug some stuff, and it's 3 minutes until the end. We can pick this up next time. We can show how how we
Yeah,
fixed
next time we'll have something
issues.
working.
Well, we'll explain the issues with both of our main problems with the API,
Mhm.
with Notion, and then setting up this Nest project. So
Yeah, cool.
um, yeah. Again, this is something we do every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. CST, and our the main goal is just to basically make us publicly accountable to build our website, because we're both busy, we both work, and this stuff all day. So we really needed something to kind of force us to stay on track with it.
Mm,
And we
yeah.
all that includes preparing for the stream a little bit.
Yeah,
Which
we didn't prepare today.
I prepared with the quick form front end,
Yep.
but it's okay. We'll pick it up next time.
Hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but
No, that's pretty much it. We'll be back not next week, but we'll be back soon.
that's important to add. Uh, Next week is Thanksgiving, so
Hmm.
or yeah. So
Cool. If anybody wants to help us with any projects, interested in suggesting a project that they want help with, or want somebody to jump in with, join the Discord. There's a lot of people there looking for projects. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. We'll see you guys when we see you. Have a good one.